This party started because I got a lot to get done today. I was at a track meet yesterday, and
Oh, really?
some
How'd that
things
go?
I'm planning on didn't. Oh man, it's again, it's South Florida. These are where the athletes are. These are where the
Hmm.
athletes are.
Yeah.
That and then one of my students had a birthday party, so it was a full day, an absolute full day yesterday. All right, so yeah, let's get this started. Okay. We here, we back. As one Crookshank here, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker here for another live stream Saturday. A live stream Sunday, excuse me. We have had some incredible guests, and today is no different. The reason I'm so excited about this guest is because as I turn on the TV, I see folk like JJ Reddick, I see folk like Jay Williams, I see folk like Jay Bayless, I see the Duke alums dominating the sports media world. And every time I see the colors, I think about my guy Danny Parker, man. And in many ways, his story debunks this myth that you got to be a football player from the age of 7. You're talking about someone who didn't start playing football until he was a junior. I mean, I remember you back when the cornrow days, man, and you used to, fight for Melo, and Melo's better than LeBron. Then now them boys are now we're talking retirement.
That didn't age well.
I'm telling you, dog. Like, but still, just seeing the retirement and seeing how much things have grown since then, and how much we used to just argue about them things, and now on this side of life, where we're giving advice, we're trying to just help the next college athlete through what's going on. Man, pleasure to have you on. Pleasure to have you as a neighbor these days, and just bring you on. How are things? How are things?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Appreciate you having me, brother. I mean, life is good. No complaints here. Um, it's funny. So me and my wife, we just moved down to the South Florida area about 2 months ago now. Obviously, we're both from the DMV area. All our family is up there, so she really took a leap of faith in following me down here. But she's a wonderful wife, so she supports me in everything that I do. But
Hmm.
obviously, some hesitations on her part with that, especially with the newborn, right? But I think it took about a week down here. I think our first week down here, there was like a snowstorm back home, and she was getting all the videos of people shoveling snow and putting on
Right.
their bubble jackets, and meanwhile we're walking on the beach pier. So it didn't take her long to look at me and say, "Yeah, I think I like Florida."
It's a nice
So
decision.
yeah.
And I've been here for about 6 years now, and people in Florida are tired of hearing me say that. The ones that have grown up here, and I'm like looking at the sunset, I'm just enjoying it. They're like, "Yo, Aswan, you gotta stop. You gotta stop." I'm like, "You don't understand where I grew up. This is
Right.
lovely. We're in the middle of
Yeah.
winter, and I'm in shorts. I'm just chilling. I can say this, but you can't. But I love the bikinis, and I love the Cuban women. All right. So,
The quality of life,
huh?
the
The
quality of
quality
life
of
is
life,
night
yes.
and day. Oh, I mean, it's just on so many levels. It's just we're still young. I just turned 35, so we still got plenty of life to live. But sometimes I just ask myself, well, why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
10 years ago, yeah.
But better late than never, I guess.
You
So
probably wouldn't have appreciated it. And Palm Beach specifically, what I'm learning is a lot of it's a retirement like city. There's a lot of revenue out here. A lot of people that are philanthropists in their own right. A lot of the people that we by the way, if you don't know, we both went to a school named Good Counsel High School, where it's a lot of donors, a lot of big sports fans. So this is like Good Counsel times 10, times 20. Actually, I
mhm.
heard I heard there's a cat named Cam Hart who plays at Notre Dame now, and he was like, he came from Good Counsel. He goes, Notre Dame is like Good Counsel on steroids, like the same type of environment, the same
Yeah.
type of people in terms of
Mhm.
Catholic school, but just really big in the sports. So, to get things started, what are you up to these days? How do you describe yourself? I know you're no longer an athlete. What are you doing these days? We'll get into your athlete experience, but just to give some perspective.
Well, we're always athletes, right? We don't
Well, oh,
ever.
that's a true statement, man. I do my 10Ks, I do my 5Ks these days. So that is
Yeah.
actually a true statement. We are always athletes mentally.
Yeah, as far as what I'm up to, obviously I already mentioned the family. So
Mhm.
starting off with a young family. My wife and I have been married now for about 18 months. You have a little
Congratulations.
4-month old, our firstborn. We already mentioned the move down to Palm Beach for my job. So I've been in the mortgage industry, mortgage banking, since 2012. So pretty much since I graduated out of college.
Hmm.
So that's obviously been a blessing to have found a career that's proven to be so long-standing and prosperous and presented so many wonderful opportunities for my family. So, but yeah, I mean, my life is pretty simple. Yeah, the thing I've come to find is as an adult is that the more simple you keep things, the better. So outside of family, and work, that's pretty much where life is at right now. So we're trying to discover this new South Florida territory, get ourselves acclimated. But we're loving it so far. So that's pretty much where my life is at this point.
Love that, love that. So let's get into the your experience as an athlete because you were one of the guys that, man, geez, you could tell like from jump you were gonna be an athlete. The thing is with me though, I kind of considered you a basketball guy, and I'm just going off the first impression because I don't know if I actually we started talking until it was must have been our sophomore year when you had strength class with us and all that, and it was us. Yeah, we were JV players. We were the JV players talking, and
Hmm.
like I felt it in you. It's like, man, this dude might actually be a football guy because you said it's the best sport to watch. So you go from there, and then you you get on the gridiron your junior year, and we're doing stockyards, and there's this guy named Drew Glossner who used to just talk so much shit, so much shit. And we go stockyards, and it's you and Drew, bang. And then from that point, I believe it was Coach McFadden said, okay, this is going to be one of the guys that gets to college. So, from that point, from the the point of you kind of identifying yourself as a football guy, how did things happen from that point to when you finally gave up the cleats and finally hung them up? Because I know that was kind of a gap in terms of when we kind of lost contact.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, the football thing happened for me so fast. I mean, you said you identified me as a basketball player. I always view myself as a basketball player. So I was obsessed with basketball.
Yeah.
Um, so it didn't, throw in the fact that my parents wouldn't allow me to play football as a kid because they were afraid of the injuries and the head injuries and things along those lines.
Hmm.
Basketball just kind of became my thing.
Right.
Yeah, I was a huge Kobe Bryant fan, as I'm
Oh
sure
man,
you
God
probably remember.
Almighty.
You
That
talked about me arguing for Carmelo. I used to have countless arguments about Kobe being Bryant. That was my guy. That was my guy. So yeah, I always viewed myself as a basketball player, but as is the case with most kids who are 6'1" by the time they're in eighth grade, these coaches, they're always throwing you in the post, right?
hmm
So that was kind of before the era. From what I hear, I'm not too plugged into the basketball scene these days. From what I hear, there's a lot more sophistication when it comes to bringing these kids up in the basketball world these days. So
it's
pretty much,
positionless now. Like it's
yeah,
actually
yeah, there is
positionless.
no
No
position.
more throwing people.
Yeah, everyone's it's kind of the European model, I guess, where
Hmm.
everyone is dribbling and shooting, so it's a little bit different now, but as you remember back in our day, it was, hey, you're the biggest guy on the court, get down in the post,
Get down the post, right?
you work on your post game. So
Hmm.
by the time I got to high school, obviously, and it was clear that 6'4" was going to be my cap as far as my height, and I hadn't really developed guard skills. Yeah, I remember Coach McFadden approached me at the end of sophomore year. It's like, hey, it's not too many 6'4" small forwards running around the ACC.
Is
So
that what he said?
yeah,
No,
yeah, I'll
see, I
never
didn't even
forget.
know that.
Yeah, I'll never forget him telling me that. He said, yeah, it's not too many 6'4" small forwards in the ACC, buddy. So
Huh.
um, yeah, that was kind of my first experience with um, forcing a decision or having to make a decision as a man that can really it was fork in the road moments as a man that you come into life that can really dictate how things go. I mean,
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I look back at how great my life is now and
Hmm.
think back, man, as a 16-year-old, if I hadn't made the choice to play football, Lord knows where I would be now.
Hmm.
But yeah, just getting back to my point where things just happen so fast, because I decided to play, and then I played that junior season, and then I get the first scholarship offer after the season, and then the second one comes, and the third, and then they start piling up on top of each other. Next thing I know, I'm committing to Duke before our senior season, and
Hmm.
then the rest is history as far as actually going off to college, graduating, etc. So things happen so fast. One thing I tell people, um, the only regret that I have about not getting started with football earlier, I can't really say I regret
Right,
my career because I mean, hey, it worked out, right? It
right.
worked out really well. But I will say it wasn't really until my probably junior year of high school where I truly it truly came to the switch clicked as far as the mentality of a football player. Like I was just an athlete, right? Kind
Hmm.
of to your point. I just went out there. I was an athlete. That was tough, right? I wasn't soft by any means, but there's still a different mentality that comes with being a football player. That for me, it took a little while to switch over from basketball. It take that final mental hurdle um,
Hmm.
into that realm. So, but again, better late than never. So I really feel like by my junior year of college, everything really came together as far as from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, emotional standpoint, spiritual standpoint. I really feel like that's when I truly became like the complete football version of myself.
You're talking about your junior year in college, so you
Yeah,
had
yeah,
already gone through the two a days and how
yeah,
like all that. Wow,
yeah,
that's crazy. I didn't even know that. And there's a couple points I want to make sure we emphasize for the listeners. Is number one, good counsel basketball was not good counsel football. There was not the amount of coaching the in terms of the it wasn't Oak Hill. We'll just say it like that. It wasn't Oak Hill. It wasn't Montrose. It wasn't DeMatha. When it came to the school, to the sport that we were known for, it was our football and our girls sports. But in terms of the basketball, they had just, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Hibbs was just becoming the coach, and there was a lot of different
Well, if
things.
you remember, we had like three coaches
Yeah, it
within
was all over
like
the place, right, right.
6 months. So like the coach that had recruited me, I forget the gentleman's name, to good counsel. I think he got fired after our freshman year, I believe.
Hmm.
Then they had a like the JV coach was then promoted to interim coach for sophomore year.
Wasn't, but he was like the science teacher or something.
He
I
was to
can't
see,
remember.
yeah, he was, and he also coached like girls
Right.
across, I believe. So he was the interim coach in our sophomore year.
Hmm.
Then we hired the Magruder coach. Remember that he committed to come, and then he changed his mind because
That I didn't know.
he didn't want to leave his family or his kids because his kids were at Magruder.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I believe it was Magruder. It was one of those MoCo public schools. And then then they brought in Hibbs junior
Hmm.
year. So we had like three coaches within
Right.
like between the end of my freshman year and beginning of my junior year. So just yeah, to your point, just the structure of the basketball program was just in chaos.
Yes.
And there was no chance for someone like myself who was, kind of a fringe, prospect.
Hmm.
There was no chance that I was going to get a fair chance at being able to make it to the next level. Here I am as a kid, and my parents had told me going into high school, yeah, the school gave us some help with the tuition, but they
Hmm.
told me straight up, say, we're paying for you to go to high school, but we can't afford college. So
Wow. Yeah.
you gotta figure it out. So here I am at the end of sophomore year, and we all know from like a recruiting standpoint, end of sophomore to end
Yeah.
of junior year, that's the make or break time. Yeah,
Exactly.
last thing you want is going into your senior season with trying to get a scholarship. So
With nothing,
I
right?
yeah, I knew I had to do something, right? So
Hmm.
I really made the move out of desperation, to be honest with you. But hey, sometimes
It
in
worked
life,
out.
those are when you make the best decisions.
Yeah, and that's why again, a lot of things get said about whether it's Coach McFadden or whether it's Coach. I mean, they did what they had to do in terms of making sure we were exposed to, like, we had the most amount of exposure. A lot of people looked at us. I mean, the work that they were doing is like they don't understand the good counsel that you have now is not the good counsel that it is without the people like McFadden, who was aggressively looking for prospects, constantly just on the grind, just making sure. I mean, I think even Jordan Clark was getting letters from football, and he never even played football.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
much just the brand in itself was grown during that time. And that's what I like to tell people now is, like, I get it's great we're on ESPN every single year, but in terms of the groundwork and how a lot of people that work towards that, it was really something special, man. Really something special to be a part of. So what I'm curious now though is when you got to Duke, what were the major challenges? Because I remember you being a UNC guy, man. I remember you you were that was your.
Whoa!
I mean,
You
I
can't
don't know if I'm
be
allowed to say it
releasing.
now,
Yeah,
but
you can't be saying things like that, man.
I don't know if people knew that about you then. But I remember there was some, especially during this time of year where it's March Madness coming up. So like,
Yeah.
talk to me about your experience at Duke.
It was awesome. It was awesome, man. That's one of the best
Obviously, I mean,
decisions.
he
Yeah.
converted.
Yeah, you're right. I did grow up a UNC basketball fan. I mean, you know how the '90s were, man. Those '90s
I
UNC
was.
teams with
Yeah,
Vince
Smith.
Carter, Antoine Jameson, Ed Cota. Remember
You,
Julius Peppers was
oh,
coming off the
you
bench.
reminded me of him actually. Yeah, I think that was
Yeah,
Julius
yeah.
Peppers.
So there were a lot of UNC basketball fans in the '90s, so I don't think I was alone there. But it's funny you say that because you mentioned Jay Williams earlier. The Jay Williams teams at Duke, I used to secretly root for them because I love that team, like the Jay Williams. I think Shane Battier,
Yes.
Carswell, I think was
Mhm.
on that team. So
Yeah. There's a lot
yeah,
of Duke, I mean, there's a lot of Duke fans that went to get counted too, like some diehard
oh
Duke
yeah,
fans out
oh
there.
yeah. I remember when I announced that I was going there. It was like the floodgates open as far as it's like with Duke fans all over the place.
They were. Every
Um,
time I see JJ Redick on TV, I think about them cats now. From Debo to Colin Stevens, the whole
yeah,
crew. I'm like, every time that was their boy. I would secretly just say JJ Redick's overrated just to piss off those white boys, just to piss them off. I didn't think he was overrated, but I would say it just to piss them off.
JJ is probably my favorite college basketball player of all time.
JJ Redick?
Just feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to love JJ. I'm the guy that will always love the guy that was hated. I
Yeah.
think Kobe, JJ Redick, anybody that the masses hated, I was a
hmm
fan of.
And we're from
So
Maryland, guys. So there was my sister went there. There was some nasty things being said about him at those games. I mean, just things you don't say. You don't say to a human being. Just
what's
nasty.
funny though is that Maryland viewed like the Duke thing as a rivalry. Then I went down to Duke and no one cared about University of Maryland. I was like, we don't care about Maryland. We care about the Triangle. We care about UNC and
hmm
NC State, Wake Forest. We don't care about
Right.
Maryland. But your original. So how was Duke? Yeah, Duke was awesome,
Yeah. How
man.
was? Yeah. How was?
It was, and it's funny because I actually didn't want to go to Duke originally. So
Mhm.
just a funny story. I never forget. So when it came time because I wanted to commit before our senior season started, just because I didn't want the distractions of dealing with,
Exactly.
recruiting. So my family and I, we sat down and we had a conversation like, all right, so what you're going to do is you're going to come up with your top 5, and then we'll sit down as a family and we'll go through the pros and cons of,
hmm
each university and make a decision as a family. So I made my list. Duke wasn't on my top 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you see these? Listen, these are things I didn't even know.
Yeah, so Duke
Really?
wasn't on my top 5 list. So I sit down and I go over the list with my dad, and my dad's like, "Where's Duke?"
Oh, he suggested that.
Yeah, and funny story. The week, and Coach Bill O'Brien, he was the offensive coordinator at Duke at the time. He had come down and spent some good time with my dad. He came over to my
Like the
dad's
one that's at
house.
Boston College now.
I don't know where he is now, but he went. He was the guy who was the head coach with the Texans.
Yeah,
Bill O'Brien.
Well, he just took
He's
over.
with Boston College.
Yeah, he
Okay.
was with the Patriots, and now he just took the head job at Boston College.
So speaking of the Patriots, fast forward signing day of that next year, he took the Patriots offensive coordinator job the day after signing day. But
Oh,
he actually was the offensive coordinator at Duke.
when
And
you committed,
it came down and visited my family. Had a really nice chat with my parents. So my dad is like, well, "Where's Duke on your list? Like, we can't just ignore Duke. Like, it's too good of a school."
right?
So he added Duke to the list, and I knew once he added Duke to the list that's where I was going.
Right,
So,
right. And yeah,
um,
I met your father, man. That was a great guy,
yeah,
man.
yeah. So that I
Really
mean
into
that just goes to show you the value and the importance of having a good support system and a
it.
good family. As a young man trying to figure things out, because I mean, fast forward now, and I'm 35, and I look back, and it's probably one of the most important decisions
hmm
of my life. As important as it was for me to make the decision to play football,
Yeah.
then going to Duke and having that experience there was just once again another life changing,
Hmm.
choice
Well,
for
let's
me.
bring that current because I didn't even know that about Coach O'Brien. Nowadays, you got kids nowadays who would be in a situation like that. They lose their offensive coordinator or their position coach. All of a sudden, they're jumping in the transfer portal. All of a sudden, they're wanting money. They wanting the bag before they commit and all that kind of stuff. Do you think
Yeah.
the current rules would have changed your decision or swayed your decision in any way?
I don't think so because I don't think my family would have allowed me to take
Hmm.
that type of position. And you know, so on that topic there of just kind
Yeah,
of the
go ahead.
current state on the current state of things, I think two things can be true. And if you're a nuanced person who's able to have thoughtful, educated, reasonable conversations, you can acknowledge two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that players should have always been making money
Hmm.
because it's a multi-billion-dollar business and they are the product. And we can also, on the other hand, acknowledge that the current system is not structured well. It was not implemented well.
Hmm.
Two things can be true at the same time. So I'm not a fan of the ability for kids to learn so early in life or get used to so early in life the mentality of when things aren't going my way, I can just take my ball and go home and
Hmm.
leave because that's not how life works, right? But if
Exactly.
you've been getting away with that in your teenage years and then your early 20s, when
Hmm.
you get out into the real world, you're gonna think that you can still operate under those
Right.
same rules. When the
Right.
reality is that yeah, did it suck that your offensive coordinator that recruited you to a school left? But hey, yeah, life sucks,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll never forget my college coach, David Cutliff. I mean, he
Oh
had a
man,
ton
I
of.
used to watch a lot of his videos, man.
I mean,
Great. At
I
least
don't.
from my
I'm not.
perspective, I was the fan. I just watched him from what they saw on TV, but I'm getting the inside information. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Coach Cut is doing now since he
Uh-huh.
retired from coaching, but motivational speaking would be a hell of a career. He could have been a hell of a motivational speaker, like
Oh
Tony
yeah.
Robbins level. Yeah. So I'll never forget one time he went off into this diatribe about, one day, guys, you're gonna wake up and like your house is gonna be on fire, your wife is gonna be mad, your babies are gonna be hungry, and it's all gonna be on you just to figure out and make it happen. And that always stuck with me as far as yeah, I mean that's life, especially as a man,
Hmm.
right? Is you're gonna have to roll with the punches, you're gonna have to get knocked down, get back up and figure it out. People, no one's going to save you. No one's here to make things easier for you. You just got to figure it out, man. So and I don't think the current system, I do think the old system was a bit extreme, maybe as far as obviously players not getting paid, and well, players were getting paid. Like we can't act like that wasn't
Yeah,
happening. Players were getting,
what's
players
happening?
have always been getting paid, but players having open access to getting
Mm-hmm.
paid and making money, um, and then the transfer portal probably used to be too strict, right? Well, I guess it wasn't a portal, but there's transfer rules. I'll say used to probably were too strict previously.
Exactly.
But now everything's just going to the other extreme. And unfortunately, that's kind of the world that we live in these days, where we live, so many people try to live in the extremes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like a small group of us in the middle trying to
Exactly.
practice common sense.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with this, but that's just kind of my viewpoints on the current system.
Yeah, I mean, I right after college, I was a scout. I was a college scout, and one of the kids that I recruited, he transferred schools like 3 different times. Like I told him, look,
Yeah.
Division 1 isn't going to be you. Okay, and I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about. But
Right.
he was too stubborn, and he goes and commits to Maine when he could have went to a D3 program that actually loved him. So he goes to Maine, doesn't work out there. He transfers somewhere else. Then he goes, doesn't work out. Then tries to transfer. He's been to 3 different schools, and I'm not even sure if he even got his degree. But
What
these,
was the young man's family situation, if you don't
the
mind?
great family situation. The
Really?
problem was, they weren't didn't know much about football. But he was very raised in a very structured environment. This is the thing. Now, when he got this Division 1 offer from the University of Maine, I was telling him it means nothing. He played for what was that school? Annapolis Area Christian, another
Mm,
Catholic school
hmm.
that wanted his friends. It was almost like when we had Nick and they brought us out to UVA. They just
Hmm.
wanted the team. I'm like, I'm sitting there telling you, I know what's happening. Okay,
Right.
they want your team. He had a great running back. I forgot the name of the running back, but these college coaches will do that. They will offer you some BS scholarship because they want your teammate that bad.
Yeah, the package deal. Yeah, the package deal. Yeah,
They'll double
yeah.
package deal. So they took that, and because sometimes they're so hung up on being at the Division 1 level, they forget about just finding the right fit. Just finding
Hmm.
the right fit. So uh, when it comes to something that you said about the extremes, if you were being in the situation you are in, where you've played multiple sports and you've been at a place like Duke, if you were running things, what would you think is a step to at least fix it or go into the right direction, at least move into the right direction?
Like if I was the college football czar.
Yeah, if you were someone running it.
um, yeah. So I think it should operate. I mean, just off a whim, I haven't really
Hmm.
put in any thought into this. I would say probably some sort of revenue sharing deal would make sense.
Hmm.
That's what the pro sports leagues do.
Right.
And we can't act like college football at least is a I'm just focused on football. I know that it kind of goes across all the sports.
Hmm.
I don't have the answers for the other sports programs that are we all know are operating at a loss on a yearly basis, but
Right.
I know at least from the football standpoint, most programs are operating at a profit. So
Hmm.
I think probably some sort of revenue share where hey, if I go to a school and they're disclosing how much revenue they're making per year, then I think it'd be fair for the roster, the football players to be allotted a negotiated portion
Hmm.
of that revenue. And that way I already know when I go to pick a school, hey, Alabama makes X amount of revenue per year. They're allotting X percentage to the
Yeah.
football team that's
I got you.
distributed evenly amongst the uh, how many scholarship players is it? 80, 85, something
Oh,
like that.
scholarship players, it's like
Yeah.
80 or something like that. They can
Yeah.
only
So
bring in 20 or something like that, though. 25.
right. So whatever the numbers are is like so X percentage of Alabama's revenue is
Mm-hmm.
allotted evenly amongst the 80 scholarship players, and that way I know I can project how much I'm going to make as a player
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to choosing a school, and but that would be my first thought process. I'm sure there's a lot of holes that
I've never even heard
never
that.
did
That
be
makes sense.
figured out, and like I said, you'd have to figure out the other sports because pretty much all the other sports operate at a loss. So I don't have the answer for those sports, but
Right.
just focusing on football, which
Mm-hmm.
we know is the big revenue generator. I think that would be a start. I think that would be a start, and it would certainly be more organized. I would imagine than it is right now. And then you give one kid, each kid a one, I guess, one transfer, one free transfer. They don't have to sit out. They can
Right.
leave whenever. Say, hey, you get one mulligan in your career. Um, I think those would be two places that you could start. But again, I haven't put too much thought process into it. That's about as sophisticated as I can get.
That actually it makes a lot of sense actually because I never even thought of the revenue share. My whole thing was to I want the players to be compensated, but I still feel like they have to earn it, and they shouldn't have access to it until they go to a certain amount of classes. They shouldn't be able to just have it without graduating. They shouldn't be that guy that's skipping class and not doing what they have to do and just going and getting paid. Like I think it
Yeah,
was.
you could tie you could tie what I'm saying, and again, these are the type of things that will come up as you think more into it. Like I
Right.
said, just come thinking off a whim. You could tie their revenue share with hey, like you said, GPA is got to
GPA
be
got to be
X
there.
percentage, and you can't miss certain amount of you can't just go AWOL on the program or something
Hmm.
like that. I mean, you can tie it to different things as far as hey, this is what you need to qualify for your
Right.
percentage of the
Right.
pie. But I mean, all the current system is right now is just a cop out for the NCAA not to have to share revenue with the players. Let's be real. They didn't want the players to get a portion of the pie, so they just said,
Hmm.
"Well, we'll just let you go out and earn your own money outside of our system."
Hmm.
And you have the chaos that you have now. So
Because they're going to keep what's already coming in for themselves. Wow.
for sure.
I listen. I tell you guys every Sunday we get factual stuff here. We keep it all the way 100. That's a strong statement, man. I love that you broke it down like that because this is something a lot of parents don't understand, and they're walking into these conversations. They're walking into these recruiting situations thinking that they know all this, and bringing people like you on just to share some insight is really really huge. So one of the things I know we're running short on time though. One of the things I do want to ask you though is what do you well, like? What's next for you? Where do you kind of see things going from here in terms of not just your athletic, your former athletic playing career, but just in life in general? Go back and talk to the former Danny. Go back and talk to the former Danny a little bit, and just kind of give some words of encouragement to the next athlete coming up.
Wow. Man, it's tough. The system now is just so much different from when we were coming up. It's
Man.
almost night and day. So let me ask you, because
Yeah.
you're a lot more plugged into the current recruiting world than I am.
Hmm.
What do you see as like the biggest differences between when we were coming up and what these kids are dealing with now?
Something called reclassification. Like I was a
Now that was always a thing. Like it wasn't as popular, right?
right,
But
wasn't as popular,
yeah,
and
because I remember like the OJ
right,
Mayo. You remember OJ Mayo was like 3 years older than. It was really popular in basketball, from what I
it was a
remember. Yeah,
basketball thing. I
it
don't
was a
think it was
basketball
big in
thing.
football,
Yeah, yeah.
but we grew up in an area where basketball ruled things, and
Hmm.
football was not as big as basketball where we grew up. And so for me as a scout with FBU, I would go and I would talk to these parents that are making the decision from eighth grade to ninth grade, and when they would say they're reclassing them and they're holding their education, they're paying so much money for camps, they're doing so much before they even get to high school. That's been the biggest difference. Like for me, it was either going to be Good Counsel, Georgetown Prep, or Bullis. That was it. And it was only because of the football program I played for. I just happened to be playing for a youth program that was very widely known. And Good Counsel because of Reggie and Jerron, he went there. Bullis because of Coach Vassos, and Georgetown Prep because they played Good Counsel. That was it.
Hmm.
But I'm not being thinking about going to Baltimore or driving out to IMG or doing like anything crazy before I get to high school. I'm like thinking about my high school experience. So the biggest difference is how much they hook these kids in before you get to high school, and they think that they just have to play that one sport, and that ruins the kid.
You know what I'm hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these things that we're discussing and describing as far as the current state of things there, I'm hearing a theory of parenthood. That's what I'm hearing. The parents are the ones who are failing.
Mm-hmm.
In that situation that you mentioned, too many. It sounds like there's too many parents out here that are trying to, like you said, specialize their kids, get them hooked into one sport, get them on the fastest track to the bag. Because unfortunately, we're just a hyper materialistic society that's just caught up with getting the bag. So
Right.
you got too many parents who are trying to live through their kids and make money through their kids, and they're making unsound, um, uneducated, not well thought out decisions that are
Yeah.
not in the best interest of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their own best interest. So really, what I'm hearing is a failure of parenthood. So I'm not even sure if we need to come up with an answer for the kids. I think we need to come up with a message to families
For the
and
families.
parents, yeah, on how to not do what's in their own best interest and try to live through their kids. But
That's factual. That's
that
factual.
that that that's probably a much longer, larger conversation.
It's a day to
Uh,
day thing. I
yeah.
can go on a tangent with that. At the current moment, I teach. I'm around these parents every day. I see it every single day. And if I was to start that conversation, I'd keep you on here for another hour when it comes to what they spend their money on, what they prioritize, where they're at. And these we're talking K through 5. So I can only imagine what's happening, when it comes to the high school. And I coached high school. I coached at Blake actually for 2 seasons, and
Okay.
it was even worse there in terms of the parents. And we as the coaches are probably the only positive male influences that they saw throughout the entire day. you know.
Yeah. I mean, and not to turn this into a too large of a discussion, but again, if you look at all the problems that we face right now in society, I really think it comes down to the failure of two institutions, and that's the family and the church.
Hmm.
Those two institutions have really rotted. I would say, particularly during our lifetimes. It probably goes back beyond that is when the deterioration really started. But yeah, I would say the failure of those institutions has definitely let down our current generations for sure.
Yeah, we gotta chop it up. We gotta chop it up face to face, man. I'm hitting here having like I'm getting goosebumps, man. I'm ready to because it's so true. I never thought about like though I've never broken it down into those two specific institutions, family and the church. What we accept from our families, how much we accept the whole, you know, be like with wedlock or not even being married with the kid, how much we just accept that versus
Yeah.
and then the church. I remember that I just had this conversation 2 days ago with a colleague when it comes to Christ Fellowship Church. Apparently, there was a funeral and he's promoting the church and he's not really doing it through the word. So there's so much we got to get into. But, you know, man,
And
this hours.
those two institutions have actually been replaced with politics and sports. If you really think about it, if you really want to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll definitely save that because that's a deep conversation.
It is.
And I'm definitely looking forward to getting because I obviously have plenty of thoughts myself
Uh-huh.
on that topic. I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well. But that's definitely a topic that we'll have to dive deep into here
Right, right,
in the
right.
near future.
Right, but see where we're like this happens. I tell people all the time it's gonna be a 30-minute conversation, but it's always gonna go further and further and further because of the guests I have on, just great people. So with all that, everyone that's tuning in, or if you're listening to this on the replay, appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you submit your questions throughout the week. I'm gonna be here every single Sunday. Gonna be a different guest every single Sunday. In fact, next week it's gonna be an actual college athlete from Butler University that's coming on to answer your questions as well. So make sure you stay tuned. Everything is going to be available on d1transfer.com. Everyone out there, you guys continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon. Oh, well, first of all, Dave, do you want to anything you want to say to say to the folks before we officially wrap up? I'll give you the last word.
No, thanks for having me, man. It was great chopping up with you. Looking forward to doing this again very soon.
All right. Again, I'll do the this is my outro every time I finish a video. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon. Later. In the stream.